because like Chainsaw Man, it's an eventful chapter, but not a lot happens at the same time. It's very, to be honest, I'm very surprised by how quick the turnaround was on this, and I'm so.
Oh yeah, so we're going.
We were talking last week. So yeah, we're gonna go Chainsaw.
So Chainsaw Man, Chapter 93, You and Crappy Movies. So go ahead.
You and Crappy Movies. That's a very good name for it.
Yeah.
Sorry, we were talking last week where Chainsaw Man, a very 180 story.
Mm-hmm.
You have no idea how it's gonna go.
Yeah. But when they do the turn, is like, yeah, they would do that.
They would, and that's exactly how I felt this chapter, to be honest with you. What I was, I guess, kind of more shocked by was this was very like, okay, this is how Denji feels. This is what Denji's thinking. Denji's acting on his feelings. Okay, here's what's going to happen next chapter. It was also quick. I was super surprised, but I guess let's go back to the beginning. What did you think? Was this the response you were expecting? For me, I don't know if it was, but the second it turned like into being about girls and being kind of about sex, I was like, oh yeah, okay, that makes a fuck ton more sense now. Like,
honestly, yeah, I was, as soon as the chapter started and I was reading through it, and like he was like, he was surprised when everyone was praising him through the television news and stuff like that, and he started talking like, wow, the girls like me, and he started crying, and I'm like, well, that's actually the first thing he wanted. Reading the first chapter, remember, he wanted like a girlfriend, he wanted to eat good, and he just basic necessities, and like, no, it's all good. And when he was just like, that's all he wants, and like, yeah, Denji would do that. He's like, he's not a piece of garbage and like that, which is kind of funny because he, comes from the garbage a lot, it seems. But I believe it when he just like on the ground, like that's all he wants. Like he wants 10 girlfriends, he wants a bunch of sex, which is kind of funny, which very much reminds me. He reminds me of still a dog, which I think that's the whole point, where like dogs don't think, they just want to eat, do it, and that's it. Yeah,
that's a very good point. The almost the counter or the push that I'll give you to kind of maybe change your thoughts a little bit is he almost wants more luxury now.
Yeah.
Right? Because before it was, oh, I just want jam, and now he's like, that's not what I really want. What I really want is to eat steak for breakfast every morning. And then, you go to the next page after that, and he's like, I know I shouldn't, I know it's terrible, but it's like, but when it comes down to it, like, I want 5. No, I want 10 girlfriends, so he's no longer satisfied by the bare minimum that he wanted previously.
Now his lust has, like, elevated, because, again, he had nothing. He had his life, right? But he was working for someone else, working for something else, and I remember the chapter before, like he doesn't know what he wants, and he wants to like live for himself, and I think that's just him being true to, like, he says it himself, like, I know I'm terrible, like, as that's an awful way to think about it, but you're being true to yourself rather than a lot of people would hide from the fact, like, I don't want 10 girlfriends, I'm happy with mine, or I don't want this one, I'm okay with like having eggs, and he's like I don't want to say the embodiment, but like he's speaking to his true feelings, and I think that's okay for the character to do, because not even like what's he been dealing with, but like just from like chapter 1, like what he had from nothing to like now. Yeah, it's more lustful and more like I want more, but it's like, yeah, you get it, right? Like, yeah, you would want that.
Well, as we were talking about,
like he never went to school. You know what I mean? So like he doesn't, and he calls himself dumb all the time. It's not the first time he's done that. So, but go ahead.
Well, as we were talking about last week in the review and in the Doors video, there's very human qualities to the series, and humans are never really satisfied, right? We always want more. We always want to go farther. We want this. We want that. And it's kind of weird because when it's portrayed in a media, there's usually this defense mechanism that rises in humans to be like, oh, well, he's like a bad human because he's partaking in too much of his desires and his vices and things of that nature. But I think everybody deep down wants that, and I think seeing. In a weird way, it's almost, I know you're kind of going from the standpoint of Denji's like still a dog, he's horny, he sleeps, whatever. I'm almost, with this particular chapter though, I'm almost seeing more of a transition into like him being a human rather than a dog.
Oh, that's a good point.
Because he's no longer satisfied in a weird way with like the table scraps. He wants to own all of these things kind of for himself, and we can kind of, I guess, transition to we won't jump right to the end, but he starts to question his relationship with Makima, right? He's like, why like was I kind of doing what I was doing for her? Why did I just, kind of roll over and play dead before? I do want to be Chainsaw Man. I'm not going to let somebody else decide that for me.
Yeah.
And that's the first time really that we've kind of seen that, and I think that's fantastic, to be honest. The dog's kind of trying to become a human.
And it's funny that I do agree, like when you watch other mediums, like oh man, this man had too much human desire and stuff like that. But you look at you don't see a main character kind of like not flexing, more like
those flaws.
Have those flaws, but like extreme desires, and you just kind of not that you want him to succeed, but it's like I have never read a manga, or at least recently in a couple of years that I can remember, where a character like his desires are just lustful, or just like aside from saving the world, he doesn't that's not his goal. You know what I mean?
No, it's kind of funny actually.
It's very flawed, but it's like very believable, and it's not like is it hard to say like you want him to succeed? Not that I want him to have 10 girlfriends, but like I want him to be happy, if you know what I mean. Like I want him to just do what he wants to do, and it's just so hard in what he's dealing with, because again, he never had nothing. And yeah, like I wish I had better words to explain it, but I really enjoy Denji, because like you don't have that many characters I can't remember, maybe different mediums, where like their desire is just so out there. He's saying it like, yo, I want this and I want this, and like, and I know I'm wrong for it, but like and so he's questioning himself too, which is, I think it's okay. It's like, man, is it okay for me to like want this? You know what I mean? Like I'm just terrible. Like I'm the worst.
Well,
and
that just speaks to the human.
Yeah, and him just still liking Makima, like after all the whatever abilities she has, like terrible thing. Well, she has the control devil, but like it's just like, man, that sucks. It's like, yeah, I guess she's cute, and like her design and stuff like that. It's just like, it's rough, man. This guy has it rough.
It is, and what you're kind of talking about though goes, it's like this for him was at least, it was believed at the beginning that this was like the first kind of positive relationship to come into his life, right? Other than Puchita, but like we don't really count that. So it's kind of very interesting, because there's this very like full circle kind of nature, and I guess we'll kind of progress more into the Makima part of the story now, right? Which is, he's come full circle. He bumped into her by accident, became the dog. This was like the first person that I guess you could say treated him with more humanity than he had been treated beforehand. Not to the highest level, but
because the first time he meet, he was like, "Oh, you're gonna be my pet or whatever." I'm gonna, you do whatever I say.
Which was still better than you're gonna be like a debt slave, right?
Yep.
So better alternative. And now it's kind of coming full circle, and it's, oh well, I'm no longer satisfied with that, but I do have these feelings because. That was the first thing I'd ever experienced. I don't know anything else.
Yeah.
And he's confronting not just her when he's sitting on the cross. Yeah. He's confronting himself.
Before we hit that page, I just want to mention too, before I forget also, he's still like a young adult. So
yeah, I mean, then he's like what, probably like
16, 17,
16,
the mass.
18 kind of thing.
Yeah. Like to him to have that desire makes sense. Like he's and again, like I hammering on the point where like he had nothing before, like he doesn't know, he never had a girlfriend, he never had this and that, and at that age of like, I don't want to say adolescence, but like he never really went to school like that, you know, it makes sense for him to have those desires, and he's to be confused about those desires. Like, and you know, he knows his faults and everything, but yeah, he's still a young man. He wants to, excuse my language, he wants to fuck. You know what I mean? He's probably horny all the time. So like,
no, you're
yeah,
right. I get shit.
yeah. So and going to that page on that spread page on 12 and 13, I love it, man. Like all those crosses, the graveyard of if I remember correctly, those are like the people that work for that department and stuff like that. If I remember correctly, if not, I think it's just a whole bunch of like a crazy cemetery. This imagery is just awesome. Like the final few pages.
It's very striking, isn't it? There's something to me that's very interesting because you kind of. This is gonna sound kind of weird, but like the image before it, you've got the power lines in the city.
Yep.
And they're somewhat cross-shaped, and then they're kind of lined up in a weird way, and then you instantly jump to crosses.
That's a good sight, man. Yeah, and it's just
right, and it's kind of like this symbolism of just there's just no end to it, right? There's no end to like the power lines to keep everything going. There's no end to like death. There's no end to this cycle kind of thing. So that was just kind of something interesting for me as well. But that's. To be honest, I'm still doing my read-through to get fully caught up and get the proper grasp of the series. Mm-hmm. But for me, out of everything that I've read so far, this actually might be like my favorite panel that I've seen, period. Just because there's such this striking contrast between like darkness and light.
With the clear sky and then him on top of the cross is just...
Yeah, and then they're all wearing like black, and they're like the darkest part of the panel.
Oh, you're talking about the next page, right? When you just see all those like, I guess goons that she's controlling.
Well, that too. But even when they're walking down the path,
yeah,
the darkest part of the panel is them. Yeah. And there's this very like it's kind of like an encroaching darkness, right?
Well,
like the darkness is coming into the light, kind of thing, to a weird extent, because they're getting closer.
Of course, and it very much reminds me, even towards we'll get to it. It reminds me of a standoff about to start, of a western.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
like dusty prairies by a graveyard.
The good
expression when you dig a grave, dig two, one for you and one for your person.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. Like he's just very, which is kind of funny because I think the chapter title speaks for itself, and what he acts is Makima. And but going on to the next page, on page 14, with all those with all those goon heads, and it's just. You don't see their bodies, you just see their head, and like they're there, right? But it's like their black clothing just kind of covers everything, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. And it's like they're one thing. They're not even people, right? They're just
which I think this is the point, because Makima does have the control devil. She could like control anybody essentially. So they're not even like individuals, aside from like some people have puppets, right? Yeah. But
what do you sorry?
Go ahead. No, ask me.
I was going to say, what do you make of the why have you turned back into Denji thing? Like, she seems overly confused by that, and I'm also too confused by that.
So, I think, so when Denji turned to Chainsaw Man, the full-on, like, demon-looking thing, and he was facing against a whole bunch of devils, that was Chainsaw Man. And remember, when he was, like, on the pseudo date, he was, like, remembering what Denji wanted, you know what I mean? Like what he like, I wanted a girlfriend, so he went. Oh no, he said I wanted to like eat steak in a restaurant, and so he actually went. Like the Chainsaw Man creature beast went to the restaurant because like, that's right, Denji wanted to do that, and so he went to the restaurant that's right, he wanted a girlfriend, so he went out on a like pseudo like hostage date or whatever. So so he's not fully. I think Chainsaw Man is when he like goes into that full-on demon form thing. But obviously the public doesn't know the difference. I think, you just see a guy with a chainsaw head in hand.
Chainsaw Man, yeah.
But like, at least whenever we see him in this form, we know it's Denji.
Okay, that's fair. Maybe that's kind of where the confusion comes in. Is she seems like overly surprised to see him back as Denji? Like, did she not think it was possible for him to come back? I guess.
Yeah, she probably thought that.
For all intents and purposes, was Denji dead until Power brought him back?
I think Denji was very much like he just gave up on life. Cause remember, Makima killed Power. Makima like made him, I guess, so depressed and like wanted to give up on life. Where as soon as he turned into Chainsaw Man, like he could just
He became it himself. There was
Yeah.
no Denji anymore.
exactly, and that's why you see fragments of like when Chainsaw Man, or the monster, or whatever, demon, he was having fragment memories of Denji's like desires. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
so that's why she's surprised that I guess Denji still has like life essentially, like still kind of pushing on, or yeah, because remember, because again he got like crazy depressed where he's like, I don't want to do anything. Let me be your dog, like, which was like, oh, that was such a rough chapter. Like just reading it, I'm like, that gave me depression for a few hours. But it's kind of funny that what she act, because remember she's trying to create, I guess, the perfect. It's so weird what she's like her goal. Um, well, I guess Denji's a fan of bad movies. Um, and I guess, I mean, would you want to live in that world where like there's no bad movies exist? I guess you wouldn't know, right?
That's true too. Especially if, like, with Chainsaw Man, where you just erase things from existence, right? I think the bigger analogy, though, Denji is the crappy movie, right? I think that's the idea. Is, yeah, the chapter is called "You and Crappy Movies," but it's almost like you are the crappy movie.
Yeah, I know
Does
what
that
you
make
mean.
sense?
And like she's trying to get rid of it. Like, but yeah, it's kind of funny where this Arthur man, I think he's just a really big fan of movies. It would have seemed, even from like his previous.
Yeah, sorry. Well, yeah, no, I don't disagree with that, but I meant about movie. Crappy movies aren't good, but they're guilty pleasures.
Oh, for sure.
They're not bad. They're not actually bad things, and I think that's kind of the idea. Is Denji is comparing himself to a crappy movie where he's like, I'm not a star-studded cast with an amazing performance by everybody in it. I'm flawed. I'm kind of dirty, right? Well, not dirty, but like he's teenage pervy in quotations and stuff like that, right? He's very human. He's very flawed, and by asking that question is like, would you have bad movies in your universe, kind of thing? And she's like, no, I wouldn't. He is a bad movie, which means his existence wouldn't be allowed in her universe.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the turning point for him, for, I guess, what you could consider like a full-on acceptance of himself.
No,
he's like,
I
okay,
agree.
well, like, I'm done with you then, because I am a bad movie, and I'm going to continue to be a bad movie.
Because that's the way I want to live. Because he's just like, yeah, and that's the way he wants to live, and that's okay. But I was mentioning about the author.
That's going to be super, super interesting to kind of see that going forward.
Yeah, and I was mentioning about the author himself. He uses movies as like.
Hold on, bro. My headset just died again. What is going on?
Yeah. What I was saying.
Sorry. So I guess that's.
What I was saying, like this author, like he must be a big fan of movies because he's always mentioning his like work. Like again, in his previous work of like Fire Punch. Spoilers. There's a character that wants to make movies, and she just likes every type of movie, crappy ones, shitty ones. Where like she makes the main character who's like always on fire. It's such a strange story to be a main character in this post-apocalyptic winter fucking wasteland.
Oh, is that the scene that you showed in our video last week? Where
like I will be your main character. Yeah.
Oh, that's so weird. That's
where
you're you're meta in your own world. So weird. Okay.
It's such a strange, like, I mean, even in that context is like, I mean, just watching that panel, I'm like, why would he say that? Like, is it a fourth wall breaking, or is it? Yeah, it's such a weird like thing to read. Well, even like one of the main villains, if you want to call her that, it was so weird. One of the villains of Fire Punch, where like she wants to spoilers, and I recommend people reading it. She wants to recreate the world, and she'll redo it as many times because the world in that world. It got destroyed. I guess it stopped because it snowed everywhere, but it stopped the production of Star Wars Episode 7, and she says she'll recreate the world again until she gets that movie, like constantly. So, yeah, that's kind of like an insane plot just to do that. But yeah, it's funny going back to movies. Like, I think he homages a lot for me. I mean, just again, just with this chapter, very. I don't want not Samurai, not Samurai 7, Magnificent 7, but very like we mentioned before, country-esque, where like you see the crosses, and I mean, look at those crows on top of the crosses where like they just fly away because it's about to go down because it's high noon.
Yeah, it was funny that you mentioned that because that's actually the panels that I was just looking at, and I was thinking kind of that too. Again, those very Western vibes where even the animals, like, a very big literary theme is using animals to kind of reflect the environment as well and stuff like that. It's like, I think pathetic fallacy is using the environment, but I forget what like and by environment I mean like the actual like nature and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it applies to animals. There might be a different term for that. But that's a very big like inconsistent literary technique, is this idea of like using the environment and nature to reflect the emotions, and that's kind of what you're seeing here, right? Where the animals get this signal where it's like, oh shit, guys, it's time to bounce.
Yeah, because like
something's about to go down. Right?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good yeah. And obviously, like on top of the crosses, we're like, I mean, we obviously know this is happening now. We're like, yeah, this is about to happen. Like, but do you think those? Let me have questions for you. Do you think those 3 crosses are significant? Where like, is one of them Denji's? Is one of them Makimi's? Is one of them another person?
I don't know. That's funny. I was kind of wondering that too. Or man, do you think Denji's gonna die? Because the way that I just looked at it is, if you want to go kind of back, if you want to maybe focus on the idea of 3, right? Who are the 3 people that Denji was the most connected with? Anki and Power, right?
Yeah.
So 3 birds, 3 people, all very connected, and all 3 fly away.
Yeah.
So is Denji gonna die? Because to be honest, 3 wouldn't have felt significant if it weren't for the relationship between the 3 characters. And then, if you backpedal to like our conversation, or again last week's video where we were discussing the front cover, again, that double page spread with the 3 of them, and only 2 of them are leaving, and now all 3 of them are leaving.
Yeah.
Again, are we maybe getting some foreshadowing here, or is it just like is it just like, okay, 3 felt like the appropriate number? I don't know, but there's definitely.
Yeah.
I think one of the weirdest things about reading Chainsaw Man is it's so difficult to know what's like subtext.
Or what's just or what it's just like. Did he just put that there to not just because?
Yeah, like, exactly.
Because it feels very much there. Like, I don't think he was trying to be deep, and I think he's kind of like messing with us on purpose. So, yeah.
Right, well, and that's the thing is sometimes it's deep, and sometimes you're getting trolled by the author almost.
Yeah, but it probably it's unintentionally deep also, if you want to say that, So
yeah, well that's true too, right? Because meaning is what you like. Things take on meaning and gain meaning from what you give them or what you pull from them.
Yeah.
So maybe he's just kind of putting it there, and he wants everybody to get a feel for it and kind of go from there. So
for sure. I mean, and even like like I said, going back to the review, I'm gonna ask you a question after this comment that I'm gonna say. Again, very Western vibes were like, not including Makami. It's like Samurai 7 or Magnificent 7, where like there's like the 7 devils behind her, like Katana, Bomb. I forgot the other ones. I don't think they're new to me. Well, not new to me, but like we've seen them in the fight the previous one. But yeah, there's 7 of them. It's again very Western, so I just love the vibe, and like the chainsaw revving up is like the holster of a gun, like shot up.
Yeah, he's putting the hammer back, kind of thing. Yeah.
But question to you: since Denji said he can't beat Makima with just like slashes and stuff like that, how would you think he's gonna overcome this?
Oh my lord. I couldn't tell you, because here's something to think about as well. If Chainsaw Man erases existence, does Denji have that ability as well, or is that ability strictly reserved for
the Chainsaw Man
itself?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because that kind of plays a very large dynamic in how this fight is going to go down and what's going to happen. And I couldn't tell you, man. Like, That's, to be honest, that kind of ties back to what I was saying at the beginning of the chapter when we were coming in, doing the review, where I was like, this felt so kind of fast. It was, okay, here's his reaction.
Oh,
Here's
trust
his
me.
thought process. Okay, he's acting on his thought process. And
That's
I
very.
don't know. I was
That's
so shocked by us getting to this fight that quickly. I don't know, man. I really don't know. Like, for example, my counter question would be, okay, if he has figured out a way to beat Makima, A, is this the end of the series? And B, if it's not, like, what's beyond this, right? Because there's always big, bad, powerful devils, and they're all kind of losing to Chainsaw Man, obviously.
yeah.
But this, she kind of takes the cake with the control and everything she's able to manipulate. So,
I mean, yeah. Go ahead. Keep going.
sorry, I was losing. I guess control is the one thing that every human desires in their life. Everybody wants to control what they can, right? Like,
Yeah.
people hate being powerless, hate being not in control. So if control is absent from the world, because that's essentially what will happen if Makima dies, right? Because she controls the power demon. So if she controls the control demon. So if she dies and it dies, and the world then loses control, like, what does that mean for the world?
I mean,
is
like,
Denji about to
but like,
create like the ultimate hellscape? Like, there's so many.
I mean, there's a lot of, but there's also a lot of themes too. Because like, remember where he says he wants to do stuff to himself. I mean, to himself, he wants to do stuff for himself. Is killing Makima like just basically cutting off the chain? You know what I mean? Where like,
Oh, if we go back to the dog metaphor, like,
yeah, but
he's
also,
breaking the leash off kind of thing.
yeah, but yeah, oh, Jesus, man, and this is as we're talking, this is like self discovery as I'm saying it. I'm like, yeah, I'm actually, but also like, if we kill Makima, is now there's more free will for people? Like, is that a good thing for humans to have? You know,
That'd be interesting. Yeah, that'd
like,
be interesting.
and I wouldn't be surprised if that's another undertone that he's trying to explain. Like again, like I just discovered like, oh yeah, if he kills Makima, it's like cutting off a leash because he's like a dog, right? Maybe I'm just reading too much into it. I don't know. So
I don't think so, because he kind of viewed himself as going into their relationship, and I use relationship in quotations because it's not really a friendship. It's not really it's obviously not a relationship in the sense of dating and all that type of stuff. But she cemented and further honed and further like embedded that idea of you are a dog and you are not worthy kind of thing in him. So I don't think you're overreading it. I think that's a pretty accurate take, especially when you look at it in the greater scheme of it. It's actually really weird now that you're saying that. If you look at the last double page spread, the chainsaw sound, like, I can't remember what you call that in comic, but you
onomatopoeia?
put in, like, it's
No,
like
no,
an
no.
onomatopoeia,
No,
right?
is
It's
it
like
onomatopoeia? I can't remember what's the word, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I think it is. I think it's onomatopoeia because
Or it's called
that's, like,
something,
supposed
but
to
yeah.
be words. Is it
No,
It's like the word sounds like it, right?
Yeah.
So, but if you look at like the chainsaw revving in the background behind them, it actually also looks, like a chain.
yeah, that's pretty cool actually.
So,
I'm pretty sure that's like the kanji version of it, but like amplify, right?
yeah, no, and I agree with that. But my point being, like, again, like, it's playing into that motif of a chain, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And he's like further honing in on what you're kind of saying with
yeah.
that kind of symbolism, right? Because, like, as weird as it sounds, if you take that same image and you separate the sounds and you like have spaces, it doesn't have the same effect. Because I was kind of staring at that the first read through, and I was like, what is that? And I'm like, oh, that's the sound for like the chainsaw revving.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, why did you do it like that?
Yeah.
And then you're mentioning this kind of idea of killing Makima, breaking the chain and stuff like that. And no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think the question that we would pose for like any viewers, any readers, that I'll pose to yourself, and you don't actually have to answer it. It's just kind of like partially like an ending.
Yeah.
I want to provoke some kind of, I guess, ending thoughts / questions is, what happens when that chain gets severed? What happens when the chain of control gets destroyed?
Especially in
is
this.
there anarchy? Is there chaos? Is there freedom? What happens? And we have no idea because, it's Chainsaw Man.
Yeah,
and every chapter has just as much chance to go from A to Z as it does from Z to A. So
yeah, 0 to 100 so fast. Just a couple of like two thoughts maybe, and then I think we're pretty much done with the review. I think the way, well, two things, and I don't know how he's gonna defeat Makima. I mean, we know probably the next chapter is gonna be very action heavy, so that's gonna be pretty cool art to look at. I think, as strange as this sounds, like maybe he might kiss her. I don't know, or maybe like I don't know, because it just could go any other way. I mean, for all we know, next chapter they could be like on the floor, doing it. I mean, obviously they'll censor it, but like it could be. I just don't know. I think the series will come to end at like probably close to 100, just because his previous work was also pretty short. I think it stopped around 120 or like 80. I think I can't remember personally, but it was very low hundreds. So that was like another short series, or if I don't want to say short series because 100 chapters is still a lot, but compared to like the long running ones. So
well, I mean, anything compared to One Piece is pretty short. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's very much true. So I think we're gonna probably hit to 100. I think that'll be like the end point. I don't know, just maybe 100 is like a good like stopping point if you want to call it, but I don't know how it's gonna end. I mean, next chapter he could come up to Makima and just like transform back to Denji and like kiss her, and like maybe that's all she wanted. I don't know. You know what I mean? So, but on a great chapter. Just these like some of the paneling was like awesome, or at least the two spreads are just like awesome aesthetically wise. Like I'll have that as my background just because it looks so cool. You know what I mean? Anything with a clear sky and like some cool shit in the front. Yeah. But great chapter. I'm excited for the new one. I can't wait till next. Well, actually, a few days. We'll just have to ramp up another video.
We got our work cut out for us this week. We're gonna be pumping out the content. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. No, I agree, man. And I think with that in mind, we'll close the door on that, and we'll finish off with My Hero.